Why there's hope for the New York Knicks going forward. It's been pretty clear that so far early on into this season, the season has not gone in the direction the Knicks would have liked whatsoever. They've been struggling very tremendously this season, and especially main guys like Julius Randle and some other players have really struggled, leading a lot of Knicks fans to believe that the Knicks are going back in the same direction that they usually go in, which is just a dysfunctional franchise. But in my opinion, I still do think there's hope for the Knicks going forward after the season. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, please consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic.
As time goes on, it's looking increasingly likely that this season is going to be a wash for the New York Knicks. Of course, things could change, but it's looking like the Knicks are not even going to make the play-in game. And going into the season, the expectations were them to be at the very least as good as they were last year and potentially better. Of course, they've disappointed pretty tremendously. But although this season, in my opinion, probably will be a wash, or even if they do make the play-in, they're probably not going to do anything once they get there, I still think going forward, there is a bright future for the New York Knicks. And I think so for a few different reasons. So of course I made a bunch of videos on Julius Randle and how he's been terrible for the Knicks this season, and in my opinion I think they should trade him. He's not right for New York, all these things. And of course, if Julius Randle is your main player going forward, I don't think the Knicks are going to be that successful going forward. I think there's going to be a limit to where they can go. But at the same time, if Julius Randle continues to play as poorly as he is right now, I think eventually, if maybe during the offseason, maybe going forward next season, maybe the season after that, I think at some point if he continues to play this poorly, the Knicks front office will eventually trade Julius Randle. So I think that issue is going to be okay, and if Julius Randle turns it around, obviously, it's just better for the New York Knicks. But the main reason why I think the Knicks have a bright future has nothing to do with Julius Randle. Of course, the main reason is RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett at the start of this season certainly was not playing very well, and actually before the year, I did make a video saying I think RJ Barrett will have a breakout season this year, but ever since that slow start and ever since he came back from health and safety protocols, RJ Barrett has been balling. He's been shooting a fantastic percentage from three. He's been doing a fantastic job at pulling up for a mid-range jump shot. Of course, a fantastic job driving all the way to the basket and finishing with either hand, which is very important for him because in the past he was a guy who only finished with his left. His passing and playmaking ability has improved overall. His defensive ability has really improved this season compared to seasons prior. And overall, I think RJ Barrett now this season is much better of a player than he was in past seasons. And I'm just very excited to see what RJ Barrett could do going forward, because even besides this year, from year 1 to year 2 he made an improvement, and so far it's looking like from year 2 to year 3 he's making an improvement, and that's exactly what you want to look for from young guys, just improving slightly each and every year, and I think we've seen RJ Barrett do that each and every season. So that's the main reason why I think the Knicks have a very bright future going forward. But even besides RJ Barrett, when you actually look at some of the other players the Knicks have on their roster, they have very nice talented young guys. You talk about Emmanuel Quickley, I think he has a pretty bright future going forward. I see Quickley as a really good player coming off the bench, a 6th man of the year type guy going forward. You talk about a guy in Obi Toppin, although he hasn't necessarily lived up to expectations early on, I do think he is showing certain things, and I think he could be a pretty decent player going forward. You talk about a guy in Quentin Grimes, which in my opinion, I think he's absolutely amazing. Of course, he isn't necessarily an all-star or a superstar type player right now, he's nowhere near it, but I think for what he does coming off the bench, or maybe even starting, I think he's such a good player and exactly the type of player you want to have on your team. Of course, he's a fantastic three-point shooter, but that's something we all knew. But besides just being a catch-and-shoot three-point guy, he actually has the ability to put the ball on the floor a little bit, drive all the way to the basket, pull up for a nice mid-range jump shot, and overall, he's certainly more than just a catch-and-shoot three-point guy. But also defensively, I think we all knew coming into the draft, he was a fantastic defender, but really ever since getting into the NBA, he's been an even better defender than even I thought, and overall, I'm just so high on Quentin Grimes, and I think the Knicks need to keep this guy going forward. Of course, you talk about some other guys that aren't playing yet, like Miles McBride. I think he could potentially be a pretty good role player coming off the bench, maybe even better than that going forward. In the NBA G League, he's absolutely taking over. You talk about a guy in Cam Reddish, who the Knicks just traded for. Unfortunately, he hasn't been playing yet, but I think after the trade deadline, he probably will get his minutes after the Knicks move some other veterans they have on their team and free up some room. I think Cam could really be a big part of the Knicks rotation rotation going forward. And overall, I just think the Knicks on their roster, the type of young guys they have, are certainly very good going forward. But the next reason I'm very excited about the Knicks' future is I think Leon Rose and the Knicks front office has proven the ability to draft. Ever since they got to the Knicks, they've drafted fantastic players. Of course, you talk about Obi Toppin, who's been a pretty decent player, I would say. You talk about Emmanuel Quickley, who was an absolute steal late in the first round. Quentin Grimes, an absolute steal. Miles McBride, looking like an absolute steal, although he hasn't really played that much. And the limited minutes that he did play, he is looking like a very good player. Jericho Sims, also another guy that's not really playing, but in my opinion, he looks like a really good player as well. And they drafted him at the very end of the second round. Overall, in my opinion, I just think the Knicks front office has proven the ability to draft very effectively. And when you look at organizations around the NBA and you look at the best ones, you talk about the Golden State Warriors, Miami Heat, San Antonio Spurs. What do they all have in common? They all have the ability to draft no matter where they draft in the lottery or even later than the lottery. And I think the Knicks especially have proven the ability to draft later on in the draft, which is something that's very important. Because especially if the Knicks get much better going forward, which hopefully they do, if the Knicks have the ability to draft, let's say in the 15 range or maybe even later, and have the ability to draft effectively, that could really help your organization and potentially push you from a team that's a 4th seed in the Eastern Conference to maybe a championship contender. Having the ability to draft effectively, at least in my opinion, is the most important thing you can do as an organization, and I'm very confident in Leon Rose and the rest of the front office based on what they were able to do so far. So overall, I just think there's so many different things to be excited about going forward with the Knicks, and even though this season certainly appears to be a wash, at least so far, of course things could change, but so far it looks like a wash, I am still very excited for the Knicks' future. And honestly, I think they're in a much better situation now than they were 2 or 3 seasons back. But overall, it's going to be very exciting to see what Leon Rose and the New York Knicks could do going forward. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the New York Knicks are doomed going forward, or do you think they'll be fine going forward? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.